Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bryce, for that generous introduction, and thanks to the World Music Institute for the chance to actually provide not just the attendees, but those of us in the conversation directly with this rare chance to speak to Wu Man, who is, as you said so accurately, the world's leading virtuoso and advocate for her instrument, the pipa, but also for a certain kind of music making and an approach to music and the way it combines music and life that, frankly, I think we can all take lessons from. So, Wuman, it's so great to see you. We're not very far from each other in the world right now, both in San Diego County. But it's still large enough that we don't see each other in person as often as we'd like. So, welcome, and how are you doing today?
I'm fine. We have good weather here. Pretty much relaxed.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I'd like to start with the pipa itself because I think everything I know about pipa comes from knowing you and hearing you play. This was an instrument that has an ancient tradition, but relatively recently well known in Western cultures like the United States and in Europe. And so I just wonder, could we just start with the object of the pipa, the instrument itself? What is it? There you are holding it. And can you just take
Yeah, I'm holding.
this just a little bit of like how does tell us about it, the construction of the instrument and how it's activated?
Yeah, I want to take a tour with you. I know I'm not sure you like is that close to see the instrument, although we played together.
Yes, we've
Um,
played together.
it,
I've looked between in rehearsal breaks, so I've taken a close look, but not everybody on the call has, I'm sure.
yeah, so this is called pipa in Chinese with the in Chinese, spelling is a Pipa, but that's just the sound. In Chinese, we if we precisely correct pronunciation is pipa. It's not pipa, it's a pipa. You see, it's actually quite flat. The body, this is the back, the beautiful back, special wood, and then the front, with a very long history, around 2,000 years old. Was introduced from Central Asia, from a Persian to China. So quite early years already landed, traveled to China, but of course, and then traveled to Japan, they call biwa, basically the same instrument. So settled in China. In the older days, we hold much smaller, actually. The structure is smaller, and we hold like a lute or oud, use a plectrum play. And somehow we took 1,000 years, and slowly we hold straight. That's all happened. All the instrument, a lot of times you see the ancient time and then the modern day, it's kind of slightly different. So we hold like straight and play with the fingers. I have my fingernails on the fake fingernails on my hands, but uh, maybe 100 years ago when we play, we just use natural fingernails. We use silk strings, nylon, gut nylon, and now it's with the steel strings.
Fantastic. And
Uh,
so can you just tell us, I mean, we can sort of see, but how many strings are there? And yes,
yeah, four strings, like
or
you
strings?
see, the four
Yeah,
pick. If you closely see the head, the design, it's a
beautiful.
dragon. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
beautiful. And this is a 6 frets on the top, which is a bigger. From this side, you can see kind of a higher. And then this is all bamboo frets, 20, 24, 20. I don't know how many right now, because they start adding more and more. So the tuning is A, D, E, A, the open strings. And then also the range is the
The
high
range
E, so right here. Yeah. So it's a quite, but this is pretty modern. This is like a later 19th century, early 20th century version. So before we have less frets, from here to there. And so that's the way, that's the kind of the structure of the instrument. Of course, you see my hands play pretty much this hand pretty much like any string plucking instrument. From same family, you put your fingers between the frets, so you. So you hear the lot of vibrato. That's because of the very high frets. So you be able to do that kind of sound. So that's just different than other instruments.
One of the things that I'm so struck by, because of course, as you mentioned, there are relatives to pipa in other cultures, and there are relatives. I mean, if you watch an electric guitarist, you're looking at something that is not completely different from that. A banjo in this culture, and
Right.
then of course
Mm-hmm.
throughout the world, there are versions of this. But the fascinating thing about watching you is how we can see, and the fact that the instrument is vertical and the instrument faces us, and so there's this fantastic combination between how it sounds and we can actually really quite clearly see the mechanism that you're working with, and so we see it as a kind of choreography and not just as a kind of music. So the physical placement, I think, is fascinating. Do you think that it also seems to me that there's a difference in sound projection with the fact that you hold the instrument vertically as well? Do you sense that relative to other plucked instruments, that it projects in a different way?
Yeah, that's actually pretty. You see, this is different than like a banjo or guitar. They have soundboard, right? They always have something open here, but you see, pipa doesn't have any. And if you take off, as I mentioned, that this is one piece. This is one, and then this is another one in the front. So if I, get older, I have to go to the luthier to take to repair. So this part will take out. We see the like big spoon inside, they curved. That's how the sound quality come from. How many, they curved the thick or thin. That's kind of very detailed. And then that's why the sound is very much, somehow people think it sounds like a banjo, kind of like a project out. It totally depends on the front wood. That's kind of a pine tree, soft wood. So the vibrate come out like that. It's not like a guitar sound coming in like boom, boom guitar. But pipa is like a bang going out. That's the
Always struck
that's
me as
the
kind of like a drum in a way, right? That the shell of the pipa is something that resonates the sound in the same way that the shell of a drum does. And of course, this is my perspective as a percussionist. And the way when you're demonstrating, let's move a little bit onto the technique. You're demonstrating, and of course, it's fretted, and you move your fingers on the frets. But so much of the style when you are playing traditional music and in your own compositions has to do with bending the sound of the instrument so that the note is sometimes moved. You can slide your hand along the string to tighten it, and then you can make a glissando upward. Can you talk about the inflections that you can do with your left hand to change the tone and change the pitch?
Yeah, it's pretty much like any other string plucking instrument. Both hands quite a different style. Particularly for pipa, we have different styles. The left hand, you see a lot of bending notes. Based on the structure of the instrument, but also the music language style very much. And then right hand, it's just plucking using hands, like a guitar, mandolin, or banjo. Basically, you use your fingernail to pluck. But the demanding side, the harder side is how you control the sound. You cannot, you cannot just like that. But sometimes you need a very subtle how you control the notes between the notes. So and also there's a timing for Chinese music. That's pretty much the key. The timing in the space. So between the notes, how you're gonna, or I do.
Right.
See, that's different. There's a music there. So if I, for example, if I play some like a pentatonic, a typical, they think that's a Chinese music from my hometown. right? Very precisely. But if I put my right hand a little bit of style there,
The thing I've always loved about your playing, and you're just showing it right now, is how what how broad the spectrum is between, on one side, a kind of vocal-like playing, where when you showed us now with the pitch inflections and the bending, it sounded so much more like a voice than it did without that. And that's on one side of the spectrum. On the other side of the spectrum, it is an extraordinarily percussive instrument. And I noticed that when we play together, you can make sounds that sound like cymbals and sound like drums. And then a final element, and maybe you would just talk about texture in a second. The final element for me is how much you dampen the notes after you play them. Like it's not always just letting things ring, but how short they can be, or how you control the length and the duration of a note. Now, every good cellist, banjo player, guitarist, lutist can do that, but it feels like this is really a part of the vocabulary of the pipa to an extent that we don't always hear in those other instruments. So can you talk about that spectrum of texture between the, say, the voice on one end and the drum on the other, that you can activate all of those different kinds?
yeah, that's why this is hard. This is a hard instrument. It's so many different faces. You know, the personality. It's not only one. Could it be so many? Could it be very, very soulful and elegant, but somehow could it be very dramatic, percussive, like you mentioned? But that's all, you know, all based on all different technique. Um, um, so for the percussive sound that comes from my right hand. So you know, if you strumming like flamenco guitar, you know, and and that kind of thing, or that percussive, that kind of sound, and then that kind of that both hands, a lot of, you know, stepping, you know, plugging.
No, it's crazy. I remember the first time we played together, I thought, wow, I thought I had the percussive instrument. And now
I
here's the
remember that when you started to play the cymbal, I kind of doing that,
I know it.
and then you're like, where is that?
Wait a minute, that's my territory. No, it's something. I have a question which I don't know if this will make sense to you, and it's coming just out of my head right now, so I haven't really thought about it very much. But, a lot of times we think that what we go to, you go to the piano to play, you go to an instrument to play, and you want to express yourself. And the idea is that the piano can kind of reflect your ideas, your visions. But my question to you is, does it go the other way around? Have you learned something from what the pipa can do that has changed your life and not just the other way around? I mean, there's so many personalities in the instrument. I'm just wondering, as a lifelong friend of an instrument like this, what have you learned from playing pipa about the kind of possibilities of musical expression? Or is that just too strange a question for you?
No, not at all. I think every day um, try to find something from the instrument. Also, the instrument taught me. Like this morning, before our session, I haven't been playing for a while. So, and then I like, oh, I need to touch the instrument. And I just found that I needed looking for what it sound like. I needed one. Just those few notes, few harmonic, I feel like, okay, this is it. This is I want it. But of course, as you know, each player, they play differently. So I have my own vocabulary. I
Yes.
have my own music language, how to interpret it. So this is me. That's kind of every day I'm looking for to discover something. And also, as I mentioned, this tremolo thing, it's so hard that I have to practice every day. those five fingers going to and you. I know you can't hear, you can see that,
Yes.
and then you going faster, and you start rolling.
That's fascinating. And that leads me right into the next kind of outgrowth of this conversation. And that is, so you have this wonderful instrument in your hands. How, what is the process of studying, or what was the process of learning it and studying it like for you? Did you find an important teacher as a young person and work? How did that go for you when you were in China before you came to the United States? So tell me about that.
Yeah, I started to play instrument when I was 9 years old. First time I touched the instrument, want to learn something, music, which is much smaller, like a mandolin. But it's a Chinese version, also plucking instrument we call liu qing. That was my early instrument. And then 12, when I was 12, I switched to pipa. So pretty late actually, compared with today's kids learning instrument. They will start 5 6. Right. Definitely the slightly, my time slightly different, than Western world. You learn instrument, go to your private teacher first, of course, and then learn a couple years. And you have to, if you want to be a musician, want to go to music school, you audition this, get the exam to in college, which is, to me, which is music conservatory. And when I was 13, I got into music conservatory in Beijing. And then I started kind of professional training. Um, Teacher, yes, very, very important. Um, from the conservatory, from those years, I have 4 different teachers. Um, I was in the middle school, and the teacher basically training me the technique side. You all this, the way you play, you have to correct. Like we know, we're instrument, you have to, hold the same thing, hold, relax. How do you hold the instrument? How you make the sound? It's a very detailed technique, tuning you. And then when you get, gradually, you're gonna finish, you go to graduate school, and will be more concentrated on music style, on repertoire. So for the pipa, we only have, in the older days, or oral tradition, there's no music score, and you teach just by listening. As many other tradition as well, Indian tradition, they all just listen to the teacher singing, and you imitate. That's the older way. So as soon as I got into the conservatory, everything is westernized. You training very much, you have to learn piano, and you look at all the music score, you have to learn, you have to read. So for me, I read both Western notation and the Chinese notation, and then the different style of the piece. So we have 13 from a later 19th century. Some pipa master notated down, wrote it down, the pipa piece. So they published it, which is only 13. So we call classical pipa piece. So we all basically to learn from those 13, so based on those 13, and then you can go somewhere else. So that's how my training, actually, my training is quite, what's called, it's sort of in that path, conservatory, middle school, high school, and college, and graduate school, and sort of this whole structure, whole foundation, which is very much a conservatory training. And at the same time, I also learned with the masters, with the different area, different school, different style. So that's how I become myself.
And can you talk to us just a little bit about, was there a moment, and I guess I'm presuming there was, because it seems to be the case for every musician, that separates you from your student days and you from your emergence as a professional or a prominent player on your instrument? Did you have a special concert or a competition or a tour that you can point to that was a turning point for you in terms of your career?
Definitely. When I first time I came to US, which is in 1990, early 1990. Oh gosh, 25, 35 years ago. Oh my God. Time goes fly. So feels like I just got out from music school, want to be a musician and try out like any other graduate student, and to okay, you left the school, you left your teacher, become you're on your own. How you gonna how you gonna be survive? And especially for me, this is a very strange instrument in this country. Like how this is not piano or saxophone, even not violin. So how can I be a musician and make this a living? So that's to me that's quite challenging. But I think luckily, New York City. I went to New York City. So many different culture, different music genre and all kinds of music. And to me, that's kind of like shocking, so different. I was like sponge to learn, to wanted to hear, wanted to play. The turning point, I have to say, 1993. 1993, I had the first opportunity have concert to play with the Kronos Quartet. Okay. And the Chinese composer Zhou Long, now he's a professor at the Missouri University, I think. Yes. And he wrote a piece, which is Pipa with the Western String Quartet, which has never happened before. And now become kind of very common, or the string quartet with any other instrument, right? But that time, a pipa, Chinese traditional instrument with a Western classical combined together. So we played in Pittsburgh New Music Festival. That first time, sort of a new music, that concept, that was the first time of my experience. And the experience with the Kronos Quartet is so funny. That's the kind of story. Before that, I never played with a, we call foreigner, or would say Westerner. In China, in the music school, the student never have that chance, right? And there's no opportunity to see. In Chinese, we call 老外, that word. So the rehearsal, I remember so vividly. We had in the rehearsal space in Pittsburgh the day before the concert. So we have to basically learn the piece the day before the concert. Of course, individually we all learned by ourselves. And then how we're gonna put together. I think we spent probably 5 hours. And that time I was barely speaking English. My English was so poor, but I'm still every day still learning. I just so nervous. I was sweaty, like so nervous. Everything to me is so fascinating. How they gonna rehearse? How they gonna concentrate on the music? They read from their score, and how they looking each other, listen to each other. That's to me was all new thing. But that was my turning point. So from then, as you know, I start play with you, play with the band Ken, with all sort of turned to new music, composed music, sort of that experience, that journey.
Well, that's a fascinating story, and of course, we all know about your relationship with the Kronos Quartet, which is worth talking about for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it was probably the best group for you to become involved with because of the openness of that quartet toward other kinds of music. But can you talk a little bit about that first moment of merging Chinese and Western sensibilities, and just maybe even from the standpoint of the fact that a group like Kronos does so much music that they're really constantly reading and constantly, um, it's a visual methodology in rehearsing. And yet your training was largely in an oral tradition in which, yes, of course, you had scores in both Chinese and Western ways, but How was that just this initial stance of merging an Eastern a Chinese art with a sort of probably the most standard chamber formation in
Mm.
Western music, the string quartet? What were the problems and what were the excitements for you?
Well, to me, most challenge is the balance and the also the fascinating to me is the color of both sound. Um, my pipa sound, as you mentioned, could be elegant, it could be percussive, dramatic. And with the quartet, which is from a first violin to cello, so they have the whole range of the sound from high to low. But I'm in the between, and also I'm the plucking instrument, but also the plucking not like a guitar,
Right.
so softly, so kind of elegant, but this is could be very rough sound. So which this is the excitement to me. It's expanded as a music piece or as a listener.
Right.
The sound that you hear the east and west, and I don't know what to call, who knows? The sound just come from a different aspect, a different way, that different experience to me.
I can also imagine that with Kronos, that always played amplified, that their instruments were also brighter and more percussive in general in concerts than if you'd played initially with the Brentano Quartet or with the Juilliard Quartet or Guarneri or a more traditional, so to speak, quartet. And of course, we know that David Harrington and well, that was the original four at that point, were so interested in exploring musics outside of the standard repertoire for a string quartet. So in a way, of course, when we look back on this kind of mythical moment of you and Kronos together, you coming from China, willing to embrace Western chamber music and a standard Western chamber ensemble that wanted to open the doors to the rest of the world was really a kind of match made in heaven. Can we talk a little bit about some other collaborations? Of course, we should talk a little bit about Bang and a Can, and I'm presuming that that came maybe through Evan Zaporin or something like that from having seen you with Kronos. I don't exactly know how you ended up walking into the rehearsal the day that we met when I was a percussionist with the Bang and a Can All Stars.
I think Evan supporting definitely involved. Yeah, some I couldn't recall what exactly happened. I think definitely Evan, and also because I play with the corners as well. And then the composer like Julia Wolf, David Lang, and Michael Gordon, that kind of group of, and you guys. I still remember very clearly. I walk into the rehearsal place in New York. We played Brian Eno's music.
Yes. That's right. We were recording music for airports, which was an acoustical rearrangement of the great Eno ambient piece, Ambient One, which was for electronic instruments and some acoustical instruments. So we did a tourable live performance of that, and you played in the recording of that, and also
Right, and
performances.
yeah, and we played Terry Riley's in C.
We did.
Uh, yes, we did a quite interesting. I To me, I mean, you know, to me everything's fascinating and new to me because before I don't know who's Terry, I don't know who's Brian Eno, and I think you guys sort of introduced those American or those Western contemporary music to add in my knowledge. Um, that as you mentioned earlier, like a musical career, to me that's sort of because you guys let me have this beautiful fortune experience.
For us as well. And so I just want to paint the picture, and please tell me if you think this is wrong, of you coming from China, moving to New York, moving to the United States, working in New York, and and associating yourself with Chinese composers like Zhou Long and then later Tan Dun and other people like that who had an openness to other kinds of music outside of China. And at the same time, associating yourself with especially American composers who were interested in exploring relationships with Asia. And in this regard, Terry Riley is, of course, really, really important, but also Lou Harrison. So tell
Right.
us how you originally started working with Lou Harris and whether or not were there adjustments that you needed to make in vocabulary or in thought in order to collaborate with Lou Harrison on the concerto for pipa?
Yeah, as you was talking about, I was my mind kind of a picture going around crazily. I thought that was the best time. I feel like everyone looking for something, not only American musician or composer, but also a lot of musicians from Asia, from different countries, especially in New York. Every day, every night, there's so many concerts going on. Um, I feel so lucky. Um, that time actually gave me the nurtured me, gave me that foundation to learn to understand what contemporary music, how I'm gonna use this very particular instrument, sort of a very has his own its own style. How can I merge it in or in this modern music world? Um, Lou Harrison. Um, Also, there's another story.
Please,
um,
please.
I know you guys wanted to hear a story. Um, when I first time I played with Dennis Russell Davis, which is a conductor for American Composers Orchestra in New York, I play a composer from Macau, Ben Chin Lam, composer. Yeah, yeah, she's my friend. She wrote the Pipa Concerto for me. And so with the American Composers Orchestra, Dennis Russell Davis conducted. That was the first time I played in the Carnegie Hall in the biggest stage. Um, and I still remember the music credit was describing my beautiful dress. My beautiful Chinese traditional
Oh my
dress,
God.
and nothing about my music and my play. And that's why it's from now on, you never see I wear any Chinese traditional dress on the stage. um, and then Dennis introduced the Lou Harrison to me.
Yeah, that's of course that's the connection.
Yeah, and he thought that Ru maybe could write something very cool for my instrument. And Louis himself also a lot of collecting a lot of instruments, including pipa, in his home.
Right.
And he early years he studied. I think he, of course, he lived in Bay Area in San Francisco. He always played with the Chinese ensemble in Chinatown in San Francisco. And then early years, I think he traveled to Taiwan and to learn some Chinese traditional music. So that's the connection. I remember that time there's no cell phone. They only we communicate is even no email. Only communicating is email just started is the fax machine.
Oh
So
wow.
when Lou finished the first movement, basically first passage,
Oh yes, I remember it very
you
well.
remember that? It because it's a very strange scale. To doesn't sound like any Chinese music. So he faxed me, and he asked me. He said, "Is that doable?
Yeah.
Can you play? Can you play? This is my music." He said, "I'm not gonna write like your traditional virtuoso piece, but this is I will write in my own way." Um, so I said, I tried on. I said, "No problem. Go ahead." So and then he faxed me different page, a different movement. So this is how we started.
Right. And by the way, because this is one of the points of our collaboration, I don't remember how many times I've conducted that piece with you, but a few times. I think
Yeah,
three.
we played in the Ojai.
We played it in Ojai, we played it in Colorado and in La Jolla, et cetera, et cetera. That piece is also very hard for the string orchestra because it is also notes that the strings are not used to playing. It's in a mode, it really drives them a
Yes,
little crazy.
it drove me crazy too. different mode. It's very, very hard for my instrument because all single notes. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can't not fool around. You can't just, you can't just that kind of, just to fake it. You can't. Every single notes right there. It's like a play Bach.
Yeah, it's true. And
Yeah.
by the way, I've known you for 35 years. I've never seen you fake anything. So it's great. It's just so
Oh, you don't know.
well. Well, there are some good questions in the Q&A, and I want to encourage anybody who wants to add to them. And I want to follow this thread a little bit of collaborations across cultural lines because that's a little bit what we're talking about in general. And the people that you've mentioned, Brian Eno, the Kronos Quartet, Bang and the Can, Lou Harrison, etc., Zhou Long and Lei Liang, whom we haven't talked about, but my colleague
Mhm.
here. These are all people who bring their cultural identity with them, but are by nature open to other cultures. And so one of the good questions in the Q&A is whether or not there are other cultures you'd be interested in exploring, and my add-on to that question is, are there cultures you'd be interested in exploring, but where there doesn't feel like there's an open door to, for example, collaboration or something like that? So where would you like to go? Perhaps where have you wanted to go that you weren't able to go because of the lack of collaborative opportunity?
Well, actually, I play a lot of other. um, I play with a lot of Central Asia musician,
Right.
and which the group I just mentioned. I'm a member of Agay Khan Master Musician Group. We had just came out a recording last year, and it's called Navruz, and I play Uzbekistan music, Tajikistan, Syria, Tunisia musicians. So we all learn from each other. So that's also my another passion. I would say that, and based on improvise. But also I through the lot of old friends last 2 years we have a Dulce Trail toured in US with my dear friends Kehan Kahom from a Persian play the Kamonche, with the Santi Badats play Indian tabla. The whole concert, which is based on mode, we just improvise. So that's another my kind of a passion.
Mm.
Yeah, I think to me, I actually not sort of like, well, say that kind of like, okay, I'm not in a comfortable zone. I don't want to in the comfort zone. I want to step out of the box. It's actually true. I curious a lot of things. I want to um, work with so many different musicians to learn and try to see what this guy could could do or what I can go further. Yeah.
And then one more question about this very thing, and that is your first associations with Yo-Yo Ma and with the Silk Road Ensemble, and that, of course, is very much drawing on this same idea of taking your instrument, which has its voice and which could learn other voices and other styles. And so, do you have? Was there? I suppose the question is, was there a turning point working with Silk Road where you realized that, oh, the world was really opening up to you, or is that a was that a critical point in your development, the association with yo-yo and
Definitely, yeah. I think that for me, the experience with the Silk Road, which is, right after I actually, Konos already opened up for me, the new music, the ideas and kind of opened another window. Wow, totally different. So, and then addition on that, and then there is a Silk Road ensemble came out, and that's to me like, okay, that was the perfect time for me to join the Silk Road, to play with work with the yo-yo, and the yo-yo had the same kind of idea, wanted to open up and
right?
not only classical or not only world music, but kind of looking rediscovery what who we are, why we want to be musician, and what's the history behind. If say the pipa, we say Chinese instrument, actually No, not that 100%. This came from Central Asia,
Right, of course.
from Persian, right? Um, so, so that kind of the idea behind this Silk Road project. I think for me, the most benefit, or which is memorable, and I will that will be with me the whole life, which is I met so many people through Silk Road Ensemble, and so many, not only musicians, everywhere we travel, even musicians family member, we all become friends.
Right.
That's to me the value of of the like life treasure to me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a wonderful thought. And it is fascinating because from this regard, we come at the same spot from two different directions because the instrument that I play, and I don't want to turn this to me too much, but percussion is this accumulation of instruments that come from all over the world. So I come from a farm in Iowa and grew up, in a non-musical family for the most part. A little bit of music. My mother was a pianist, but mostly I wasn't going to be a professional musician. But when I played the drums as a kid in a rock band, or, when I first started studying music, I had my hands on the entire world because there are instruments from Africa and there are instruments from Latin America and Asia, obviously, and Native American cultures and everything. And so for me, this was the portal to a much bigger world. Is there a part of the world you haven't explored that you would like to in terms of musical collaborations?
Oh, I guess I think there are so many. But I think I will never play the rock band.
Well, I have, and I left it for. I don't have a lot of romance about touring with a rock band. We'll talk if you ever really want to do it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Oh, actually, there is tune. Some my friend taught me. Okay, anyway.
I could go back.
uh,
There is a question in the chat about the bells that are behind me. I could play those for
right. Boom, boom. um, I think for me, I basically open to anything, if that makes sense, if there's a meaningful behind. And to me, it's I always, I will willing to try to see how. I'm really not just like you're doing so many different projects, work with so many different musicians. Just enjoy to become a musician. Yeah.
And then I have just one more question that I want to ask you, and then we'll make sure to check with the Q&A questions to answer those that are here from the participants. Um,
Mm.
so we've been talking a little bit about the future when I've asked you what kinds of collaborations would you like to do and everything. And of course, we don't know what that will bring, but in the immediate future, I know you're going to Abu Dhabi soon. And do you have big projects that you'd be able to share with us just in terms of what your next projects and your next moves are?
um, well, actually, I've been working with a composer. Uh, Last year, I premiered a new Pipa concerto by very excellent composer, very like talent genius, Du Yun, yeah, Du Yun. Um, so you probably already heard, and
Yes, I
and
know.
she,
Oh,
yeah, she's crazy.
she is. What a talent.
I know. Just that's why I'm saying she's crazy, which is in a good way. She wrote a piece commissioned by Philadelphia Symphony, Detroit Symphony, and the Knights of New York. And so from those groups, so the following year I will play her music. I did it with the Detroit already, with the New Haven symphony as well. So next the summer I will be in Vail with the Philadelphia um, to play concerto, play chamber music.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So and then well, a lot of kind of a project. I also working on a project with the Kronos Quartet, which is say go beyond the Golden Gate Bridge. We focus on the on the immigrants, U.S. immigrants, especially, right now what's going on. We're Kronos and I wanted to share that history of American history with the audience through music. But also, I am also like a visiting professor in China at the conservatory. So I sometimes have to travel back to China to share to teach the younger generation, to share my experience, my musical thoughts as well. And then I'm looking forward to working with you again too.
Yeah, I am looking forward to that also. We did a recording of Lei Liang's piece, the Vis-a-Vis, which
Vis-a-vis, yes.
Maya has released on Islandia. That was very, very good. That was amazing. And
Yeah,
there's one thing I want to get back to that, but there's a question in the Q&A that is very specific, and that is whether or not you will be a part of the Global Musicians Workshop at New England Conservatory again
right,
this.
right.
Will you be doing?
Yes. Oh, yes, I am this summer. I think August 10 to 16, I will be the one of the faculty. And this also Global Musician Workshop will be moved to China. I mean, no, there's another side in my hometown, Hangzhou. So, anyone just, if you wanted to go to China side, we also will be more another workshop there. So I will be also the faculty. It's going to be very busy in August.
August turns out to be busier than than ever.
Busy, yes, the mostly vacation time, but I'm kind of working.
Yes, the music festival. And this is a random question, but have you worked with the members of the Iranian Female Composers Association? Do you know what that is? This may be something that you and I would take, that we could talk about, offline, but I want to share this also with the listeners in that it's a group of young Iranian female composers that are really so interesting, and I'm sure that they would be, there would be fascinating music that would come out, perhaps even for the two of us. I'll use this
Yeah,
as a chance to say maybe we should think about them for our next project.
definitely. Yeah, I'm totally. I played with Iranian female kamonchi player and oud player we in Europe, but haven't been working with a composer yet.
That's
So I'm
interesting.
definitely, yeah, I'm open. Um, yeah, and someone also asking if I played with the Western Africa, like a kora. Yes.
Sure.
I sure. I played early, couple, years ago. I was in Philip Glass ensemble. We played the project called Orion, which is from 7 different countries, and Fudi Susu, I think, if I'm right, his name. So I remember he played kora, and we all played together.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I actually been played so many different, electronic and all the kind of.
Have you discovered anything that doesn't work with the pipa? Because I wouldn't have thought before I heard you play that that instrument that you're holding would be so flexible as to be able to work with West African music and electronics and Brian Eno and a rock band and Lou Harrison and the Philadelphia Orchestra. Is there any place that you've discovered that it didn't work?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, all those collaboration, all those I've been doing. Actually, every project behind it's very carefully thought. It's not only I just jam. Well, there's is jam together definitely, but after jam you have to think about is that work. Well,
Yeah.
it's also based on the musician, based on the musician, based on that person, the player. Sometimes it doesn't matter that instrument. It really the musician you work with if there's a chemistry between that you know what I mean.
I do.
For artists, for musician, for your collaborator, that's the most important. I think for any business, the same thing. Sometimes it doesn't matter the project itself, but how you're gonna make the project a success. It's the person
Now, that's a
you work with.
fantastic answer to that question, in that, of course, with the right person, almost any kind of combination works, and with the wrong person, almost no combination works.
Exactly.
So I'd like to turn this back to a more sort of personal level, and I want to ask you, what does your practice day look like? I mean, what is your daily relationship with your instrument like? Do you have a special time of the day that you practice? Do you have a warm up? Do you have a ritual? Take us through this moment that no one sees, where you're in a room alone with your instrument, and what do you do?
Um, Mostly if I'm at home, if from a long trip, I will stay away from Pipa for a few days, just let it go and do my cooking, with the friends, drink drink tea, just enjoy San Diego. And then my mind will come back. Okay, it's a time. So in the morning, mostly like nine-ish, I will start the practice, looking for the sound, basically that fingerings. And then if I have to learn a new piece, and it will be gradual. So hopefully, but right now sometimes I'm not enough. Hopefully, couple hours per day to practice and to learn new piece. Um, I'm sure sometimes the composer write a piece is so hard. You have to
I could tell
spend
you
time.
stories about this morning's practice, for example.
Exactly. So you have to study the piece to understand, talk to the composer. That's also my whole process. And but I'm still, still try to improve my everyday play.
That's the thing that I think everybody I respect in the world of music has that behind. In other words, you spend every day trying to be a better musician at what you do. And I don't know, you have students, and so do I, and sometimes it's hard for me to convince my students that practicing is worth it. But the older I get, the more I realize that this is the most precious part of every day, because no one else is in the room. There's not an audience. There's not a composer looking. It is really just the touch of one person to the object. And having played, in my case, I think I picked up my first pair of drumsticks nearly 65, 66 years ago. And I barely have spent a day where I haven't had something in my hand like that. And so now I guard this time. It's so precious to me, just this moment alone with the instrument. And in a way, well, maybe this is a question for you. I was about to make a comment, but let me ask it as one of the last questions. What role did your instrument have in your mental state and ability to survive the pandemic? Because for me, it was really important. I won't answer it for myself, but do you have did your work with the pipa, your holding that instrument, did that help you in some way, or how did it work?
Definitely, it's become a daily sort of a virtual, what's called that word, like a meditative,
Yeah.
um, part of my life for the instrument. Actually, during the pandemic, those years, where our relationship much closer. Usually hate and love that kind of a relationship.
Yeah.
During those 2 years is quite kind of getting to know each other another level.
Well, you're describing precisely my relationship, and I was doing a lot of conducting when the pandemic came, and traveling, mostly conducting. And when the shutdown came, I realized I didn't actually really miss conducting, and I didn't, if I'm honest, didn't miss teaching, and really didn't miss playing concerts, but I missed touching the instruments, and it was almost like a love that had escaped, and so I fell in love again during that time, and I think it really caused was able to kind of steer me through that as helpfully as I possibly could. We're at the end of our
Yes.
hour, which is astonishing because it just flew by, and
Oh, wow.
I
It
always
is an
well, I
hour
always
already.
knew how much I loved you as a person and as a player, but hearing more of your stories and your thoughts about how perhaps we can use music to understand our current social problems and how we can use music to become better people, I think has really made my day.